What is up, YouTube? My name is Jordan, and today I have a very special video coming your way. I know a few of you have been waiting a long time for this one, and the day has arrived. We are finally here. Today, we are going to dive into the production on You Turn Me On, But You Give Me Depression by LØLØ. What is there to say about this song? It is a fantastic pop song. It was a joy to be a part of the creation of. And what we're going to do is we're going to go through the song like we always do. We're going to go through the elements of the production bit by bit. I'm going to show you what's going on with each track. I'm going to talk a little bit about its creation and how this thing came together. And you are going to have a front row seat to all of that. So get seated, buckle up, grab yourself a coffee or a beverage of equal caffeinated quality, and get ready because we are going to do a production deep dive on You Turn Me On, But You Give Me Depression by LØLØ. Let's get it. All right, here's the session. I'm gonna forewarn you before we get started. It is a chunky session. Just scrolling around here, getting the session kind of prepared for this YouTube video, I noticed that there's a lot of stuff going on. There's a lot of edits, there's a lot of vocals, and it's generally speaking just kind of a chuggy session. I am at my max buffer size in Ableton. I'm running an M1 Mac, but it still seems to be in spots it's a little laggy. Like my scrolling is a little laggy. Plugins are coming up a little bit more slowly than they normally do. So bear with me here. We're going to do the best we can. But what I'm going to do, like I've done with previous deep dives, I'm going to just let the track play. We're going to check it out. We've got a couple of Easter egg sort of things to look at as usual. And first thing I'm going to do, I'm going to just let the track play from the top. This is the track as it went to mixing. I'll talk a little bit about the personnel involved with making the track. But first, let's just have a listen and get familiar. So this is You Turn Me On, But You Give Me Depression.
I wish I fell for an axe murderer instead of you. He'd kill me too, but at least he'd make it quick. No, he wouldn't get me hot and heavy, then pretend he never met me and make me such a crazy bitch. I might just be a masochist. I'll let you eat me alive. You call me up, I can't resist. I swear that I could punch a hole through the wall with all this pent-up aggression. I embarrass myself till I need witness protection. You got me so damn high, I need an intervention. Yeah, you turn me on, but you give me depression. Take me to heaven, put me through hell, all the way up and all the way down. Give me attention, then throw revenge and all of this tension. I don't know how you take control of my body, putting bad thoughts in my mind. Soon as I look in your eyes, I could punch a hole through the wall with all this pent-up aggression. I embarrass myself till I need witness protection. You got me so damn high, I need an intervention. Yeah, you turn me on, but you give me depression. You turn me on, but you give me depression. I might just be a masochist. I let you eat me alive. You call me up, I can't resist. I swear that I could punch a hole through the wall with all this pent-up aggression. I embarrass myself till I need witness protection. You got me so damn high, I need an intervention. Yeah, you turn me on, but you give me depression. You turn me on, but you give me depression. You turn me on, but you give me depression.
All right, so that's the song. What a great song. It is a hallmark of her live show. It's just a fantastic song. Great hook, great writing, top to bottom, great choices in the production. This is a collaborative effort, production-wise. Collaborative effort all the way around, actually, as most songs are these days. Yeah, so I guess the first place to start would be the personnel. Who's behind this track? So I had a conversation actually with LØLØ before filming this, and because I wanted to get my facts straight, and I hate misrepresenting songs because, we got to give the people involved their due. We got to give them their due credit. And I have been falsely represented on songs before in terms of, my contributions to things. So I try to make a point of getting it right for everyone else. So who is on this? Who wrote it? Who are we dealing with? The song was written by Mike Robinson. It was written by LØLØ, and it was written by Jeff Warburton. If you don't know who Jeff Warburton is, look him up. He is an absolute powerhouse Canadian songwriter, works a lot down in Nashville, is, responsible for a lot of the Shawn Mendes hits. All around amazing guy, amazing songwriter. Those are the principal songwriters on the song. With regards to production, the principal producer on this was this amazing cat from Nashville, Mike Robinson. In fact, most of LØLÖ's recent output has been Mike Robinson. He has run with the LØLØ sound, and a lot of the current songs of hers that have been doing really well, he is responsible for. So there's Mike Robinson on the production, and the way it sort of worked was that it was started, I believe, in Nashville in the writing room with LØLØ, Jeff, and Mike Robinson. And when it came time to finish up the production, it was shipped off to myself and Benjamin Thomas, and we kind of put the finishing touches on the production. I'll show you kind of where those things begin and end to the best of my ability. In me speaking to LØLØ about this, I also was able to get access to the original demo of the song, which I don't think very many people will have heard, which I've got up here in this neon green or yellow, depending on what your color palette looks like. And so we'll take a listen to that too. It's actually very interesting to see like where the song started versus where it ended up. So continuing on with the personnel, we've got the writers, Jeff, LØLØ, and Mike Robinson. We've got Mike, myself, and Benjamin Thomas on the production. The song was mixed by Alex Ganea, and it was mastered by Randy Merrill at Sterling Sound. This is a great example of a song where, like, when you have really talented people involved on a song from the very beginning to the very end, you set yourself up to do really, really well. Obviously, in today's climate, you never know. You can't predict what's going to be a hit. I was checking the numbers on this, and I think this song is sitting at, 33 million? Yeah. So it's not doing that bad. It's doing pretty well. Before we jump in, though, I thought it would be cool to have a listen to this demo and kind of see where things began with this track. So yeah, maybe we'll check that out. This is the demo of You Turn Me On But You Give Me Depression. We won't listen to the whole thing, but I'll give you an idea, maybe like a verse pre-chorus kind of thing.
I wish I fell for an axe murderer instead of you. He'd kill me too, but at least he'd make it quick. No, he wouldn't get me hot and heavy, then pretend he never met me and make me such a crazy bitch. I might just be a masochist to let you eat me alive. You call me up, I can't resist. I swear that I could punch a hole through the wall with all this pent-up aggression. I embarrass myself till I need witness protection. Get me so damn high, I need an intervention. Yeah, you turn me on, but you give me depression. Take me to heaven, put me through hell.
Okay, so yeah, I think it's really cool listening to stuff like this, like hearing an old demo of a song that's out in the world now. It's a really cool kind of exercise in perspective because you see where something starts, and then going back into the session, you'll start to hear where like the important changes were made. Like, for instance, there's additions to the drums that I felt were really important to make. There's additions to the guitars that I felt were really important to make, and like kind of scene changey sort of stuff that I think really helped the song move along. And I think where Ben and I were able to kind of like positively affect the movement and the energy of the song. Some main differences that I can hear between the demo and the main track. Obviously, this is a different vocal. That's a big one. The delivery on the vocal is very, very different. We have some different choices in guitars. We have some different choices in mix. I'm pretty sure this was done like on the day when they wrote it. It's hard to say like what's absolutely deliberate in situations like that. Like in a lot of cases, at least in my experience doing songwriting sessions in LA, play and stuff like that. You never know what's going to make the record at the end of the day. Maybe you make a track that works on the day, but who knows what it's going to sound like when it's done. It's interesting hearing the choices that were made and then where the track ended up. Going through this session, I guess what we'll do is, like I said, we'll go through top to bottom. We'll try to go in order of appearance. So I guess the best place to start always is with drums. A lot of these drums came from Mike. I know this because I don't use battery. A lot of these prints say battery 4, so I know these are coming from him. A couple of things I see that I recognize are probably mine are this drum kit up top. That is an addictive drum thing, and if you've watched my other LØLØ deep dive, you will have heard me talk about addictive drums. And then we've got a stereo crash down here. I know this is my sample. What else have we got? A reverse stereo crash, a Cashmere sample, right? So like a lot of these things are minimal additions on our part with regards to me and Ben. But yeah, let's go through it. We'll uncover each little bit. So this first thing that kind of comes into view is this clap. And this kind of, establishes the 2 and 4 in the song. 4 bars goes by, and then we add that snare, right? Again, I'm not exactly sure where these samples are coming from. I mean, it says battery. Battery is the plugin that would have been hosting the samples, but in terms of whether these are splice samples or whether they've come from somewhere else, I couldn't tell you. I'm only going to be dealing with what I've got. We've got, a relatively short, kind of snappy clap. 4 bars in, we get this snare, which is, more kind of a garden variety snare. I'm doing a little bit of processing on that, kind of smoothing the edges out, high end and low end. We've got a Pro Q here, just doing some, sort of complementary EQ, just to kind of get it to fit into the track a little bit better. And then we get the addition of our main element kicks and claps. So at the pre, we get this kick coming in, which is, our main, kind of foundational kick. And processing wise, it looks like I'm doing a pretty significant mid-range boost. I guess just to kind of get it to cut a little bit. We'll listen with and without. Right, so yeah, just kind of getting it to cut through the mid-range a little bit, giving it a little bit of that crack. We also get this sort of like 2-step clap kind of thing going on. That also comes in. And you can hear it's kind of made up of a couple of different samples. So all 4 of those tracks together kind of makes up what I consider to be the foundation of the drum part in that section. And they all work together. I think that's a really, important thing to highlight here is that it's easy to kind of take a bunch of samples, whack them in, throw them in a pattern and, just kind of move on. But I think these were really well chosen on Mike's part and they work really well together. Minus a couple of little EQ moves, they sound like they are a drum kit already. Despite the fact that they're samples, they sound like they belong together. So yeah, hats off to Mike. He's an absolutely incredible producer. I don't know what this is. This just looks like an empty region. Yeah, there's nothing going on there. Moving on, we get into the chorus. Now, with that kind of being established, there's another sort of like unspoken rule in pop music where every 4 bars or so, every 4 to 8 bars, you kind of want to introduce some new stuff. And so whether that's like new rhythmic stuff or new melodic stuff or introducing a change with regards to those rhythms or melodies, you want new stuff to continue to be added to the track to kind of keep the attention of the listener. And so once we get to the chorus, nothing really quote unquote changes, except we just kind of keep adding more onto the pile, so to speak. So here's where we get the addition of this addictive drums layer, which is just, like more of an acoustic kick and snare sound. I'm using the Gretsch stop sign drums in here, and then I've got the Caviato Custom Shop snare. We're not really doing any cymbal action yet. It's really just, to kind of, again, beef up those kicks and snares, those 2s and 4s. And that really comes through in the finished track, I find, is like there's a really solid foundation of drums in those kicks and snares. There isn't really much cymbal action going on in this song other than, kind of punctuating things like crashes and things like that. So we've got that getting added to our other, kind of main tracks. There's another snare that switches off here, which I believe is just the same snare as this. It's just quieter. Marginally quieter. Yeah, so it's the same EQ. Yeah, but I've turned it down quite a bit. So I guess what I'm doing is making some room there. Then it looks like we get some hats coming in. So these are those. Again, sort of, straight up the middle garden variety hi-hats. These are nice. I don't know where those came from. I think those might have been a mic thing too. I think those were mics because the only place I have them is in a folder called You Give Me Depression, Vox. So I feel like those came from Mike. I love them though. I think they're really great. And that in combination with the other hi-hat, we get this. It's so cool. It's like, it doesn't sound like hi-hat, which I love. You program enough hi-hats and soon enough you'll start to just kind of like be really bored of hi-hats, to be completely honest. And you'll start looking for other things that do what hi-hats do, but are just not hi-hats. And this to me sounds like if you took PVC pipes and turned them into hi-hats somehow. I love it. It sounds cool. And it's like chunky is the best way I can sort of describe it. Okay, so what else we got? We've got the stereo crash. This is my sample. I know I use this one all the time. It's literally just 2 stock crashes in Ableton that I've combined together and panned stereo, hence the name Stereo Crash. That makes up the whole picture of the drums in the chorus. I guess we can solo all those up. We'll have a look at the processing on the bus for those. But all those sound like this. Just great drum sounds, like the main impression I get from them is like a word I used, back describing the hi-hat, like chunky. Like they sound really chunky to me. And I love that. They just, oh man, they hit in such a cool way. There's one thing I noticed that I forgot as we were listening, this backwards snare. So subtle, but kind of like reinvigorates the second half of the phrase, like I was saying, we want to try to introduce new stuff every 4 to 8 bars or so. And so it's not exactly something new. It's not exactly continuing after it's been introduced, but it just kind of like cashes us in again on the second half of the phrase. Same as this kind of open hi-hat thing that happens in that chunky hat. It's just enough of a difference right at the end to kind of like get us into that second half and make it kind of feel new again. So that's a picture of the drums. The processing that we have going on here is actually a little bit more extensive than what I would do currently on my drum bus. In fact, my drum bus has gotten leaner and leaner over the years. I've worked more on getting the sounds themselves to really work together and sound good without bus processing, but here obviously we can see we're doing some stuff. So maybe what we'll do is loop this chorus and we'll have a look at what's going on there. Okay. So maybe what we'll do is we'll go kind of thing by thing. We'll turn all of it off and then we'll turn it all on one by one kind of thing and see what each plugin is doing. So here's with no processing on the chorus. And yeah, pretty frowny face, as I like to say. So yeah, obviously is lacking punch, is lacking definition, it's lacking character, it's lacking a lot of stuff. I'm pretty sure all of this stuff was probably very necessary. So first thing we've got drum bus. I tend to really not use this plugin very much at all. In fact, I often forget it's there, but it's a really great plugin. So here's with drum bus. And already that's a marked difference. Here's without. Yeah. So I think of that as kind of a step forward, right? We're not going too crazy right off the bat, but we're also not, we're not being too shy about it either. The next thing is a little Pro Q. Looks like there's some active EQ bands and a nice big, high shelf. So we'll check that out. So here's without that. And here's with. Interesting. I don't usually use Pro Q in this way often, but it looks like I'm not actually doing active EQ in terms of turning things down. I'm actually doing more of active expansion here, which is really interesting to me. I don't know why I chose to do that. I guess it needed it, but it's a really interesting effect, and I actually really, really like the way that sounds a lot. So here's without again. And here's with. That's really cool. I didn't realize I was doing that. And man, it's a really cool sound. Like it to me, it adds to like I was saying, the drums sound very chunky. It adds to that chunkiness quite a bit for me. Like we get a little bit of added punch down there in the 80 range. And then we're also getting just a little bit more of that chunk whenever the hi-hat really leans in or the kick really leans in. And we're getting it just in that mid range. And then we've just got a nice big bright shelf to open up the high end. I should really kind of save this as a preset just to jog my memory. That's a really, really cool trick. See, sometimes you do things and you need to go through old sessions in order to find out what you were really doing. Okay, so let's keep going here. The next thing looks like it's a G, like a G compressor. So here's without and with. So yeah, very minimal. Just putting the tiniest little bit of a point on that. Next thing, we've got more compression. I guess I was on a compression streak at this time. We got the 33609. Let's check out what that's doing. Here's without. And here's with. Again, very, very, very tiny amounts. Like if I take both of these, just because they're doing essentially the same thing, and we'll kind of go on and off with them. Here's on. And here's off. It's so subtle. On. Off. Yeah, it's just adding that there's a little bit of level, there's a little added level, there's a little bit of point coming through. All in all, I think good choices. I'm typically not that gentle with stuff, at least now. So it's interesting, kind of going back into this and seeing like, what the hell am I doing here? Level lock, great, or the devil lock rather, great plugin. Use it all the time. Again, usually in a very heavy-handed way, which looks like I'm not doing that here. Anyway, here's without. And we'll kick it in. Here it is. There we go. Yeah, so to me, like now, here's where like the energy is coming from. It took us 3 compressors to get there. But yeah, like I'm hearing the room qualities of all of these drums come up, the room qualities of that addictive drums. I'm hearing that come out. I'm hearing the point on a lot of those kicks and snares come out. I'm hearing there's now a bit more of an extension on the snare. Things are taking up a little bit more space. It's a little bit more energy. It's a little livelier. There's no replacing Devil Lock for that kind of stuff. It is an absolutely amazing plugin. We'll keep it rolling here. What have we got next? Neutron 3 Transient Shaper. What are we even doing here? Let's check it out. Okay. So yeah, more point. Just getting those drums to really cut through. Yeah, I mean, it's interesting. Like, you would think you would have enough point on the drums by the time you've added an SSL G bus and a Neve 33609 and a Devil Lock, and you've got drum bus over here. Although I am actually taking the transients down on this drum bus plugin. You would think by that point you have enough point on the drums, but I guess I didn't. Also, there's a fair amount of limiting going on at the end of all of this, I'm pretty sure, on the master bus. It's never a bad idea to hedge your bets, and also the thing about a lot of this stuff is you can always go back and turn it off, right? To be completely honest, it's actually a lot better to work in this way where you're doing very, very little amounts, because then when you go back, you can take away very little amounts and you don't have to worry about like, oh, I'm getting all of my point from this. Let's say it's the 33609. All of my thwack and my point is coming from one compressor and I turn it off and all of it goes away. It's like, well, what if I just wanted to take away like 10% of it or 15% of it? that's actually kind of what these compressors are doing, is they're sharing the load that way. And so if I did only need to kind of subtract like 10% over the finish line with the point on the drums, I could bypass one of these and get myself in the range that I would want to be in. It's actually a smarter way to work, if I'm being honest. A track needs what it needs, and you got to kind of follow your instincts when it comes to mixing and working on songs. So that's what I ended up going with. Next plugin in the chain is this RC20. I love RC20. It looks like I'm doing, what are we doing here? There might actually even be automation here. Yeah. Okay, we're automating the magnitude. Okay, so that's only really coming up in the pre and the bridge. And I think how this is being used as a lo-fi, like filtered down kind of thing. That's, I think, what's going on here. And then what have we got down here? Free clip. And it just looks like I've got a ceiling here. I'm just kind of establishing a ceiling. Yeah, like a -1, I think is where I had it. So just kind of like shaving off the top of everything. We don't really need to listen to this RC20 because it's not actually doing anything yet. If we check out what free clip is doing, so that's with it. Yeah, so we're basically just shaving some transients off the top before we get to our mastering stage, just to kind of like get us the level in the drums, I think, that we're looking for, but to not be just absolutely punishing the limiter in the final stage kind of thing. So with regards to this RC20, why don't we take a listen to where that comes in terms of my automation here. Let's listen to this pre. Right, so we kind of filter down, we come back up, same sort of thing happens here. Oh, and there's actually some kind of tonal element in there. That's cool. Not typical for a drum bus, but it says it's noise reverse. What is that thing? Let's check that out. Yeah, I guess I just threw it in the drum bus because there was no other place to really put it. But that's pretty much the drums. There isn't really anything new that comes in. It's the same crashes. It's the same chunky hat. It's the same garden variety hat, a same reverse snare kind of thing. All the other drums stay the same. The only thing that really changes actually is in addictive. We get just a bit of a variation in the beat. And it's really just kind of giving us, some fills to, to play off of the rest of the drum beat. And so if we're listening to the whole drum arrangement there at the end, we've got this. So yeah, we've got like an open hi-hat that comes in. There's some tom fills. We've got accents, some things to kind of play off of, and things that you haven't previously heard in the song. And we ended the song off with those 4 hits and a nice reverse crash. And that, I think, makes up the majority of the drum arrangement for this song. So what's next? Bass. Always bass. Bass, on this is fairly uncomplicated. If you see my last deep dive video, you'll know that we very often use a P bass. The P bass we use is the LØLØ Sucks bass because LØLØ Sucks is carved in on the back of it. It has been my bass for the longest time, and it's been one that we've used on countless records. However, there is a different bass that appears on this song, which is Benjamin Thomas's bass. And it is a Mustang bass that absolutely rips. It lives at his studio out in the west end of Toronto, and that was what we elected to put on this song. I can't remember what the bass was on the song before it came to us. It may have actually even been synth bass. I can't remember, but we felt it was necessary to put a real bass guitar on, and this thing was sitting there in the studio, and it was just kind of begging like, hey, pick me, and it sounds incredible. So we'll go through a little bit of that, see what it sounds like. So this is Ben's Mustang bass. Cool. go. So there's a little pre-action. We've got the chorus. Sounds like this. And, just classic, picked bass. I'm pretty sure I used like a nice heavy pick on it. I'm pretty sure I was the one who played this part. There's not much to say about it. That's kind of what we're working with, We get to the second verse. It's, same kind of thing. In fact, might even be the same take. Yeah, I'm pretty sure it is. And just like a nice, it's a bass that has a really nice character to it. When you're hearing those slides between notes, I feel like that's a spot where you usually kind of hear the character of a fretted instrument the most. This bass just kind of speaks in a really cool way. And it has that kind of thing that I think a lot of people look for in short scale basses, which is this like kind of uncanny depth. Short scale basses for some reason just sound so deep to me. I don't know if anyone else gets that. Leave a comment if you find that as well. But like I've always found that like short scale basses, like Mustang basses, Jaguar basses, things like that, they just have this undeniable depth to them that you can only really get somehow from a short scale bass. And it's counterintuitive. Like you would think a short scale bass wouldn't have the kind of depth that a regular scale bass would have, or even an extended scale bass. Like you think about something like the Gibson Thunderbird. I would imagine that thing has an insane amount of bass, which I'm sure it does, but it's counterintuitive, like I said, to look at a Mustang bass and be like, oh, that thing's going to have a ton of low end. Then you plug it in, you realize, oh my God, it actually does. It's crazy. So going through, same kind of stuff, right? Like we've got verse, chorus, blah, blah, blah. And then we hit our post chorus. Same kind of stuff. Not really reinventing the wheel here, like it's pretty standard stuff. What are we doing for processing on it? Well, my favorite thing in the world is LA2A on bass. It does something so cool. It levels out the low end in a way that I can't really get from other stuff. Obviously, an invaluable compressor for vocals, an invaluable compressor for a lot of things. If you've never tried LA2A on bass, I highly recommend it. It is an absolute vibe. And so we've got that. Sounds like this. Or I guess what we'll do is maybe we'll do the same thing we did before. We'll bypass all of these plugins. We'll hear what it's doing, and then we'll kind of introduce one by one. So, I mean, that's a pretty solid bass sound unto itself, I've got to admit. But obviously, every sound needs to be massaged in some way into the track because it's living with stuff, right? It's very rare you get a tracked sound that will fit. It's one thing to track something and go, oh, that sounds great. And it probably does in isolation. More things will sound great without touching them in isolation than you realize a lot of the time. And then you introduce it to the context of living with a bunch of other instruments and you go, okay, it needs something, right? It needs to live in a place that it's not currently living in. So my first go-to with anything of that variety is always LA2A. If I need a little bit of a squeeze, LA2A is also really good at getting the kind of like mid-range 700 to 1K area to poke out. So here's without LA2A. And here's with. And yeah, we're not doing much here. Couple dBs at the most, maybe 3 dBs on the loud stuff. And it just plants it. It just sits it in a spot and it doesn't move. And that's what I love about it. Next, we've got this. I mean, why does this always happen to me? It's crazy. Like this happened on the Debbie Downer one too. Like I open up an EQ and all of a sudden I'm seeing this crazy resonant high pass. So yeah, we're pushing up a little low end again, but I know why this is happening if I'm being real. It's because we need that sub. We need that foundational low end. So here's without Pro Q. Actually, maybe what we'll do is we'll listen on a chorus with this because then we'll actually hear the effect of this resonant high pass. Yeah, I don't know about you, but I feel like I'm missing some sub there, right? So let's listen with the EQ. Yeah, right? Yeah, I don't think we're going to be rattling many trunks without this thing going on here. And then we've got a bit of a mid-range bump here too, just to kind of push that mid-range forward a little bit more. What's next? Saturn. You've likely heard me talk about Saturn before, you know, nipping this application of it from Eric Valentine, where he talks about how tape saturates, and the way that tape works as it saturates is that it actually gets more and more saturated the higher you go into the frequency spectrum. Generally speaking, the response of tape when you hear something back, the low end is relatively uncooked, mid-range is a little more cooked, and then by the time you get to your high end, you're actually pretty cooked, like approaching overcooked. So we've got this. Here's without. And then with Saturn, we've got this. Yeah. Man. It just, what it does is so subtle, but so cool. Like, man, that plugin is sorcery. It's crazy. And then, you know, to finish things off, we've got just a little bit of Decapitator, giving us what I imagine is a fair amount of distortion. Let's listen for that. Here's without. And here's with. Yeah. Fuzz, you know, like giving us some fuzziness. I guess that was a personal choice. Someone along the way, you know, said the word Decapitator and we all obliged. And it's interesting because, like, you know, generally speaking, I think the way a lot of people will use distortion or saturation on bass is in selective ranges, actually more so the kind of way that I'm using it with Saturn. But in Decapitator's case, it's kind of being applied across the board. And sometimes, I mean, I've heard people describe it as being kind of, maybe that's a no-go zone sometimes, because you're essentially distorting a lot of the bass frequencies in the same way and as much as you're distorting everything else. And what that can lead to a lot of the time is a little bit of a fartiness, a little bit of like you gain definition in the high end, but you lose definition in the low end. And so I think where we've kind of like split the diff here is in the mix knob. We're only mixing in at 50% and we're not actually going super full tilt. Like 7 is high on Decapitator. Like, you know, you're a little past a medium rare, I think, but like it's not actually that much distortion at the end of the day, especially because we're only mixing it in at half intensity. So that is sort of the complete picture of the foundational bass guitar. If you've watched the Debbie Downer deep dive, you will also know that I've talked about bass power chords in the past, and lo and behold, we have some bass power chords here. Let's check those out. So actually relatively uncooked bass power chords. This is an interesting move. Devil Lock. It looks like we're making use of both the crush and crunch. And we've got, yeah, darkness at 0. And we're only mixing it in at about 3. So let's check out one side of that and we'll see what we're working with. Oh, yeah. So we're getting obviously a bit of a squeeze. We're getting a little bit of crunchiness that comes along with the Devil Lock that everyone loves. But again, it's doing kind of what a lot of those other plugins on the main bass guitar are doing, in a sense, to kind of like seat it in a spot. So like what the LA2A is doing, it's seating it in a place, clamping it down a little bit, getting it to sit. And we've got one on the left and one on the right, and they're both kind of doing the same thing and panned left and right. We've got this like power chord image similar to what a left and right power chord guitar would be doing. Right? And so that mixed in with our regular bass sounds like this. pretty crispy, pretty crunchy. Yeah, pretty straightforward. That brings us to guitars. Everyone wants to know what's happening with this main electric guitar. And here's the thing. I wish I could show you what's going on with these parts, but this guitar part was delivered to me from Mike as a printed file. So I also wish we could have a look at what's going on, but unfortunately we don't have those files. However, we will take a listen and see what we're working with. So here is the main guitar part. Just an incredible part. Like, hats off to Mike. You know, that is a world-class guitar part. Gotta hand it to him. Like, wow. Insane. You may also be wondering why there are two parts. There is kind of a weird and silly reason for that. We kind of split the filtering between two of the same part. And this was kind of strategic, kind of not. In the end, basically what we wanted was the effective filtering, but we wanted a way to actually kind of like have it only at 50% intensity, if that makes any sense. So we wanted the effective filtering, but we didn't want it to be affecting the entire sound of the guitar. We wanted the filter to kind of be heard as if it were on the guitar, but we also wanted the full frequency range of the guitar to be present when things were being filtered. So it's kind of like having the filter, but then also not having the filter at the same time. And you'll see in spots where this kind of comes up right before the pre-chorus is one of them, where it's like you hear the filter, but you also don't hear it. Here, I'll show you what I mean. It's a really weird effect, but it's kind of like things are being filtered, but they're also not being filtered, you know? The only way to really achieve that is to do what we're doing here, where it's like you duplicate your part and you only filter one of them. It's like having your cake and eating it too. You can have things be filtered, but also kind of not fully commit to the entire effect of a filter and what it would have on just one single track. So what have we got going on here? Not a heck of a lot, I can tell you. We've got, you know, some EQ3s that are really just doing some dippy kind of stuff. I've got a Pro G here too, just to kind of clean up the schmutz that was in between each guitar phrase. As you can see in here, we have those breaks at the end of the phrase, like da-na-na-na-na, and then there's nothing. So there was some schmutz in there. Just thought I would clean it up. And also this, because this guitar is the very first thing that you hear in the song, you just want it to be that perfect, clean, spotless, da-na-na-na-na, nothing, you know? And I guess, you know, you could go and you could edit that, or you could throw a gate on and be lazy. So I guess I was lazy. We're notching out a couple of frequencies here too. You can have a listen to that. So here is without the gate and without the Pro Q. So yeah, you can hear there's a reverb sound on there. I guess that's what it was the Pro G is getting rid of. So we're clearing out that schmutz. You can hear there's a couple of resonant notes in there. There's a couple of resonant frequencies that, to me at least, weren't really playing too well with the rest of the track. So here's with Pro G. You know, just cleans it right up. And then we've got Pro Q. So we're thinning things out quite a bit. This high pass filter, you know, is definitely evidence of that, but we're also cleaning out some errant frequencies here. We've got 2.5K, you know, clearing that out. We've got some like 950 that was bugging me. We've got some 420 that was, you know, not playing nice. And so that's kind of what that sounds like. I'm pretty sure we're probably doing a version of the same thing on the bottom track. Exactly. So Pro G, Pro Q3, blah, 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 blah. We've got that little filter move thing that comes in, and then we get to the pre-chorus. There's this secondary guitar part that comes in. Again, another, you know, genius Mike Robinson moment. And it sounds like this. We're just shaving off some low end there. You know, here's what it sounds like without Pro Q3. So yeah, there's a little bit of boxy low end in there. just making room for, you know, the main guitar that we already have, as well as the bass and drums. Giving them room in those low mids to really kind of occupy, especially because this is an auxiliary part. We don't really need any of those low mids in there, or as much of them, I should say. Both of those parts together sounds like this. Just two parts that work perfectly. If you want a masterclass in pop guitar writing, I think this is it. It's a perfect example of how two parts just coexist together in this seamless kind of way. And it's immediately attractive. That is the hardest thing to do as a producer, as a songwriter. There's however many, what's the number now? It's like 200,000 songs a day get uploaded to Spotify. Like, how are you going to stand out? I truly believe that writing in this way, coming up with clever parts that are hooky, that get stuck in your head, that's how you do it. And this is a great example of exactly that. Big ups to Mike Robinson. So, you know, we get this break here. There's a break in the drums. There's a break in the bass. We get LØLØ coming in. I can punch a hole through the wall. And we get our main chorus guitar parts. Now, here is where Ben and I kind of put our stamp on the guitars. And yeah, we'll go through and we'll have a listen. So the first thing is we've got this classic, what I like to call the guitar tree, you know, center, left, and right guitar parts. Those sound like this. And I believe we've got some different parts going on there. So let me just break these up a little bit and we'll have a look at what's going on. This left and right part, this sounds like a, yeah. To me, that sounds like a Telly. I mean, it could be a Les Paul maybe, but I remember the Telly kind of living at the studio, you know, pretty permanently, you know, around this time. This to me sounds like it could be the neck pickup on that Telly. This could also be Ben's Les Paul. He has a Les Paul too over there. It's a black standard that's really, really nice. So we've got, you know, left and right, literally nothing on them, you know, like just recorded well, didn't really need much of anything. And then we go to this triad in the center. Yeah, this sounds like my Telly. I remember specifically this part that's in the center. We obsessed over this because we've got our left and our right, and here's kind of, you know, a bit of a digest in pop guitar part writing. At the end of the day, we're all kind of working with the same tools. We all have things like, you know, with respect to guitar, we have triads, we have power chords, we have any manner of everything in between and outside of that. So whether you're also including extension chords, things like major sevenths, ninths, 11ths, you know, so on and so forth, or minor variants of that variety or dominant variants of that variety, we all still have the same stuff to work with. And so how do you want to set that stuff up? How do you want to divide those things amongst a set of recorded guitars? A place to start usually is power chords because it's foundational, right? And it's like, okay, well, we've got the quote unquote root movement, you know, kind of spoken for in the guitar part. How do we want the harmonic quality of this chord progression to be represented in the guitar part? And we decided that a triad guitar, so a guitar that was only playing kind of like the top three strings of the guitar in triad shapes, was going to be responsible for our kind of main harmonic movement. And so we obsessed over these particular voicings of this triad. I remember us kind of going back and forth for a long time. I know that we recorded this part probably a dozen or so times, just trying to get the right combination of what was staying put note-wise with regards to each one of these triads and what was moving. And I think that's the cool part about it, is that what stays the same from chord to chord and what moves from chord to chord is really compelling. And that in conjunction with these power chords, it creates this really homogeneous sound from chord to chord. And to me, I think where it's really heard the most is in this transition on going from the last bar into the first bar of the phrase again. The way those three chords move from one to another, I think really exemplifies the choice nature of how we orchestrated that movement. And to me, like, that's a significant aspect of the chorus that really kind of makes it what it is, at least in the guitars. So we've got those three. Again, there's nothing going on with them. Another thing we started doing or started experimenting with, again, it doesn't happen on every song, but just literally taking a guitar and putting it through like a cranked preamp. And so we've got these kind of like fuzzy preamp guitars. Those sound like this. And yeah, it's really just there to kind of give you, again, a different flavor of the root movement. We've got a lot of really fizzy high end that doesn't really belong in guitars normally. And we've got a lot of this really super distorted compressed low end of that fundamental. And the way that that mixes with the rest of these guitars is really interesting. So here's all of that together. So now we've got our power chord left and right. We've got our triad up the middle. And we've also added distorted Revolution-era Beatles-esque preamp guitars left and right. That sounds like this. It gives it a really interesting and kind of like, in a way, kind of comical sense of dimension to it that I really, really enjoy. Cool. And again, nothing on those. We were really committing to these sounds here, and it shows. I think they're great sounds. Last but not least, we've got this left and right part going on here, which is, I believe, another power chord. So it is a power chord, and to me, actually, that sounds more like a Les Paul. I'm pretty sure these ones up here are the Telly. Those, to me, sound like a neck pickup on a Les Paul, 100%. And so the thing about these, though, is that they are not what these are doing. You know, they're still power chords, but they're inverted in interesting ways. To me, they're not doing exactly the same thing that these power chords are doing, and as such, they lend a different kind of extension to the sound of the power chords to begin with. And so here's an interesting experiment to play these sort of extended power chords with our regular power chords. You'll see what I mean. Check this out. There's also very subtle things about the way that these bottom power chords are following the harmonic movement contained in the chord progression. There's a note that's hanging in there from the first chord to the second chord, which is the na, 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 na. That note. Once we get to the third chord, na, 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 it changes to that note, which again is following the sort of harmonic content of the progression, but doing it within a power chord as opposed to the way this triad is doing it. So again, like, a lot of these parts are kind of like sharing the responsibility of representing the chord progression, I guess is the best way to describe it. And they do it all in a very, very interesting and compelling way. Again, like as I said. So all of those guitars together sound like this. This kind of writing in pop music, this kind of like guitar composition in pop music is something that I think is really compelling. I know I've used that word a few times now, but it really is. In a style of music that is often lambasted, a style of music that is often guilty of being very simple and, dare I say, insipid for that very reason. These are ways that you can bring a lot of creativity and interest to an otherwise simplistic guitar part. And that's the thing, is like the chord progression isn't exactly anything new. And why would it be? Like, we reuse chord progressions all the time. You'd be surprised how many songs are the same chord progression as other songs. It's how you deliver those chord progressions and how you share the responsibilities of that chord progression amongst different parts that's really what makes makes it compelling. It would be very easy to do a right and left guitar part of just the chords of this song as full bar chords on the guitar and call it a day and have that be your guitar part. But to me, that would be much less compelling than what we've got going on here, where we've got one part that's just doing the root movement. You know, we've got one part that's just doing power chords. Then we've got one part that's just handling the important harmonic content of the, you know, the bigger picture of the harmony, i.e. those triad guitars. And then we've got another thing that's doing the root movement again, but it's doing it in a completely different way as single notes with a really weird frequency response that kind of is outside of what you're comfortable with hearing with these other guitar parts. And then we've got another power chord part that's kind of doing a bit of both. Like it's not exactly responsible for the root movement, but in parts it's not totally responsible for the harmonic content either. It's kind of picking its battles. It's you know, it's choosing where it wants to do that. And when you put all of that together, it makes a unique image of what would otherwise be a very stock chord progression. So if there's any takeaway for these guitar parts, I know I've talked about this a lot now, but those are the things that I pay attention to when it comes to decoding music and decoding guitar parts specifically. So moving on, more of the same stuff, you know, this chord progression, exactly the same thing we've got going on. Again, same parts, same everything. The only thing that changes on this second verse, second pre kind of thing is we get these big goose egg guitar strums on the pre. This is during the You Take Control of My Body part. We come out of these main verse parts into more of these kind of like big, strummy, held out parts. And then we cut down to, again, more chorus guitar parts. Only now what we've done is we've included the verse parts in the chorus. Again, you know, trying to level your chorus up every time. This was a really easy way for us to do that. You can see in the first chorus, we've got them muted. Second chorus, let's throw them in. Let's inflate the picture of this chorus as much as we can, right? So now in the chorus, we've got our verse parts going on. And I don't know about you, but like it just sounds even bigger than it did before. Here's our first chorus. Sounds great. Here's our second chorus. Just like boom, it just opens right up and sounds great. Like, how could you not love that? So in terms of things, you know, kind of coming in, here's another, you know, Mike Robinson special. I think these are guitars. It's interesting though, because they almost sound like they could be voices that are just really distorted. This is that main sort of post-chorus hook that you hear in the song. So if we're going through those part by part, I've got a lot of this stuff frozen too, as you've probably noticed, just because there are plugins that I don't have anymore, like Guitar Rig 5. I don't have anymore. There's a couple of plugins here that I've gotten rid of. That's why they're frozen, but we'll listen to every part. So there's that. We've got another one. And one on bottom. And so that's really cool too. Like it's a 3-octave melody part, which does this really cool thing in the track if we're listening. By doing something like that, you kind of hedge your bets a little bit. If you got 3 octaves of the same melody, you're pretty sure someone's going to hear it, right? Like it's definitely going to cut through the mix. You can be kind of sure of that. And so cutting out a bunch of the low end and doing a nice big push up in the high end, getting rid of some of that, you know, pokey high mid range, especially when you start distorting stuff like this and you've got it in multiple different octaves in different ranges, registers, you'll start to hear that pokey stuff really quick. Like I'll bypass this, but I don't think it's going to be very nice on our ears, just forewarning. Yeah, like a lot of that whistly stuff, like the low end stuff doesn't bother me too much, but like it's that whistle that's at 2.4. Yeah, like that to me, like I'm not kind of wincing as much. Just nice little strategic move there just to kind of make sure we're not killing everybody, you know, at a festival on the mains. And so what do we got left? I mean, that's pretty much it. Again, just, you know, more of the same stuff. We've got these strummy guys in the bridge. These strums are the same ones that we had in the second pre. The only difference is that we get a reversal going into the last chorus. So if we're listening to that, we'll just solo up the whole guitar bus. We've also got that second half of verse part. Right, so just a clever little reverse part, and then we're back to main guitar riff. We hit our chorus again, same stuff. We hit our post-chorus, we get the same melodies, same everything going on, you know, same post-chorus melody. And I think that's pretty much it. You know, we've got a little bit of a bus thing going on. Again, not too much other than this massive boost in the high end. I think I did this just because I wanted to kind of try to get away with not doing too much on the tracks. And this kind of got me there, especially in these chorus guitars. Like that's, I think, why we have so little processing on them, is because they're kind of getting what they need from this EQ over here, especially in the high end. Then yeah, cutting a lot of low end, a little bit of a boost at 100, little dip 250-ish, little dip 1.6-ish, you know, nothing really crazy in terms of the dips. It's really just this massive boost in the high end that's giving us the sort of overall presence in the guitar parts that we need. We've got some filtering overall. We'll see what that's doing. And it's just this little kind of filter thing. Yeah, so just a little bit of a filter move coming down into the bridge, you know. What's this utility doing? Okay, so we're turning it on there. And the width. Okay, so this is interesting. What I've got is this utility turning on just for the, you know, first half of the chorus, just for when these main verse chorus guitar parts are playing. And the utility is turning on, and the width is set to 42%. So it's basically kind of monoing out these two guitar parts just for this first half, and then it turns off. We get the whole picture of the guitar arrangement coming back. So it's this kind of effect of like everything kind of goes really narrow for a second, and then it opens back up, or at least that should be what's going on. So let's check that out. Yeah, so if you listen to we'll listen to like bridge into this chorus, and so we'll get a lot of stuff happening on the sides, and then it's all going to narrow up for a second, and then it's all going to push back out again once we hit that second half of the chorus. Right, so we're all right and left, everything is stereo. Now we narrow up. And we go stereo again. You know, again, I don't know. I've seen a lot of people do this. I can't really attribute it to one mix engineer or one producer or because I've literally seen more than a few people kind of use this trick. But it's a really great way of cultivating some energy without necessarily adding a part or adding a plugin or doing something clever in your arrangement. You can literally just, all you're messing with is the stereo picture of what you've already got going on. It's an interesting little trick there, kind of going like a little bit more mono for a second, and then boom, spreading out to stereo again for the entry point of a section or the main event of a section. So that takes care of guitars. We've got a few keyboards here. I'm not going to spend too much time on these because these are more like felt than heard. A lot of these came from Mike. I don't think we did any of these keyboards. What's he doing here? He's got a diva in the chorus that's doing this. You know, really kind of basic stuff. We've got another low diva doing this. Yeah, you know, basic kind of stuff. The way that plays in the track sounds like this. So yeah, just kind of like almost choral like stuff kind of occupying the background a little bit. So like when those guitars go away, when we get those breaks in the guitars and the bass, there's just some kind of stuff happening behind. It's like padding, so to speak. Then we've got some stuff happening in our pre. We've got this track Sign Piano. Again, a lot of this stuff is like really, like I said, felt more than heard. Yeah, it's like, you know, like Bruce Hornsby-ish kind of synths, you know? Really kind of basic stuff. There's 2 tracks down here. I don't think they're doing anything though. No, these are just empty regions. Great. Nothing like confusing yourself. And so again, how those play in the track, they just kind of add, again, just like this foundational, nice little padding for the rest of the stuff going on.
You take control of my body, putting bad thoughts in my mind. Soon as I look in your eyes, I could punch a hole through the...
And so in the chorus, we get those 2 diva tracks coming back. We also get what look like serums. Like, yeah, just really, really smart part writing, you know, auxiliary part writing. Next serum down, we've got this. So same sort of thing, but just on a different patch. You know, that's a great way to get a part to go the extra miles, superimpose it onto a different patch, see what it's doing. So all of those synths together in that second chorus sound like this. And they just add that extra layer behind everything else going on. In the track, they sound like this.
I embarrass myself till I need witness protection. You get me so damn high, I need an intervention. Yeah, you turn me on, but you give me depression.
You know, just really simple stuff. It's amazing how decoding pop hits, you hear me say a lot of the time, you know, we're not reinventing the wheel here. You don't have to go out of your way to like create these insanely complex or, you know, to do like complex math. A lot of the time, you know, what occurs to you, the simplest thing that occurs to you to do is likely going to be the most compelling. You don't have to go out of your way to try to force the issue on a lot of this kind of stuff. You know, the things that naturally occur to you to do are often going to be the most compelling and the things that other listeners are going to gravitate towards. You know, I think people forget that we all have our own taste, and it's likely that you share a lot of the qualities of what make up your taste in music with the listening public. And if you trust that in yourself, you are often right about those inclinations that you have. And so we try not to reinvent the wheel on this stuff because that can actually work against you. It can be a detriment to a song and what a song actually needs. We move through the rest of this progression. There's a couple of things that show up and go away, but a lot of these parts are the same sort of parts. There's a couple of edits here and there, like over here. You know, a lot of the same stuff is happening. There really is not a heck of a lot of new stuff coming in or going away. A lot of it is just really choice mutes in places where they need to happen, like when there are breaks and things like that. Getting a lot of these keyboard parts to live where they need to live relative to where the energy in the rest of the track is living is kind of the name of the game here, you know? Like, so if they're designed to be background parts, let them be background parts, right? You know, a lot of these counter melodies and things like that, that's what they are. They are counter melodies. They are supposed to serve as a counter to the main melodies of the song. So allow them to be that. Processing wise, I don't think we did very much of anything on these. Yeah, what do we got? Utility. Looks like there's Volcano there. Yeah, like I know Volcano is a plugin I don't have. So yeah, these are probably even have come from a session that Mike Robinson had sent us in all likelihood. That's also probably where the Guitar Rig 5 stuff came from. So yeah, I think that makes up the majority of these keys. We've got an EQ on the bus here. And yeah, just, you know, again, cutting low end, getting rid of, you know, low mids, getting rid of a little bit of this presence stuff. Normally, I wouldn't do this kind of a thing. If anything, this presence range is a place where you want to accentuate things like, you know, synths and keyboards and stuff like that. But because the guitars are the ones that are driving the bus in this song, we want to make as much room for them as possible. And so I think that's kind of, you know, the impetus behind a dip of that nature. And I think, you know, LØLØ fans have waited long enough. We arrive at the vocals. There were 2 versions of this song vocally. vocally. And I'm sure you've heard when we were playing the demo at the beginning of this, obviously there have been changes from the demo to what you hear on the finished record. But there are also two different versions in terms of what went out into the world. There is a quote unquote dirty version and a clean version. That's kind of why we have this bleep track here, which is literally just a 1K sine wave that we're using to bleep out the word bitch, which is over here. Going through the vocals, we know what to expect with Miss LØLØ. Maybe we'll have a look at this verse and I'll take you through what we've got on her vocal. So here's that.
I wish I fell for an axe murderer instead of you. He'd kill me too, but at least he'd make it quick. No, he wouldn't get me hot and heavy, then pretend he never met me and make me such a crazy bitch.
So yeah, I mean, what can you say? You know, that hasn't been said before about the one and only LØLØ. She is insanely consistent. Her pitch is incredible. If you've watched the Debbie Downer deep dive, you'll know that a lot of this is probably familiar. Now, here's the deal with this auto-tune plug. The reason you see two auto-tunes here is because this auto-tune is an Antares one, and this is a UAD. I've got the UAD going instead of the Antares one because my Antares license does not work on this computer. Or rather, it is not compatible with my current operating system. And so I've had to resort to using the UAD auto-tune, but we're doing a version of the same thing. And the weird thing is that on other tracks where you will see this Antares plugin, it still works. It's just the thing where if I expose it, it's going to crash the session. So in lieu of that, what we're doing is I'm just going to show you what I did on the Antares one, and then we'll know that anytime we see it, it's actually this, but just an Antares version of the plugin. So very basic stuff, you know, retune speed 30, flex tune 30. The key is E flat major. Even when you're watching this, you'll see there's actually little correction that's going on with her vocals.
I wish I fell for an axe murderer instead of you. He'd kill me too, but at least he'd make it quick.
On the notes where it needs to, it's correcting, but most of it is kind of living very, very close to the center. And I think that speaks to her consistency. She's just insane that way. And then we've got my favorite Shep's Omni channel. You may have seen this preset, G vocal start. This is what I start with on most of my vocals. We've got high pass at 200. We've got 2 dBs of this thump thing, which is kind of just like a resonant low end kind of vibe, from what I understand. We've got the saturation in at 30-ish. And yeah, we're boosting up 8K shelf. We're boosting up 7.2 wideband. We're taking out a little 800, doing nothing with the low end. We're compressing on the FET setting at 4:1 with a 5 millisecond attack and 100 millisecond release. We've got the de-esser at 4.5K minus 14 threshold. So we can have a look at what that sounds like in the track. In fact, we can, have a look at all three of these. LØLØ likes to kill me when I do this, but again, you'll see she's the real deal.
I wish I fell for an axe murderer instead of you. He'd kill me too, but at least he'd make it quick.
So we throw our auto-tune back on, we throw our Sheps back on.
I wish I fell for an axe murderer instead of you.
And so we get all the, that nice breathy high end, that nice articulation from the compressor. And this last Pro Q3, again, just cutting a little bit more low end just to hedge bets.
I wish I fell for an axe murderer instead of you. He'd kill me too, but at least he'd make it quick.
From now on, if you see this trifecta group of plugins, it's going to be pretty much exactly what I just showed you. That's kind of a picture of our first verse. There's a little kind of like frozen, like reverse reverb tail that comes into our pre, which sounds like this. And that's just to kind of bridge the gap vocally. So if we're listening through, it sounds like this.
Make me such a crazy bitch. I might just be.
And then we get some leads and doubles going on. So here's our main lead down the center.
I might just be a masochist. I let you eat me alive. You call me up, I can't resist. I swear that.
Yeah, and we're also getting, the addition of some processing, some effects and things like that from section to section. In this first section, all we've got going on is I like to do a meta flanger in parallel. It just really helps to get mono vocals out of the center and to occupy a little bit of the sides. I love it personally. And the other thing is Aphex. Again, just to kind of get that crispy high end. It's a harbinger of pop production that way. And so that's kind of happening on our first verse. And then once we get to these pre-chorus vocals, we're basically just adding a little bit of reverb, which is coming from Valhalla Vintage Verb. In fact, this is, I think, a preset I made for LØLØ, or someone made it for LØLØ. It might not have been me. I can't remember. Either way, we're not going too wide yet on the left and the right, because that's obviously what we're going to do when we hit the chorus. But yeah, we've got this center, left, right thing going on. That sounds like this.
I might just be a masochist. I'll let you eat me alive. You call me up, I can't resist. I swear that.
And what you'll hear now is that the arrangement starts to kind of move around a little bit. There's a lot of really clever sharing of parts that starts to happen. Parts start to get broken up here in really interesting ways, and we're going to jump around a little bit. So first thing is she says, I swear that I swear that, or I swear that. Then the I could punch a hole through a wall comes from this distorted vocal down here in this verse 2 group.
I could punch a hole through the wall with.
And what's happening too is that the doubles for that are coming from the doubles that naturally happen in this chorus, which sound like this.
Could punch a hole through the wall with all this pent-up aggression.
And now the interesting thing is the lead vocal that takes over in the chorus is back up here. And it sounds like this.
All this pent-up aggression, I embarrass myself.
And so it may seem really chaotic in this sense because it's like we're going from this verse thing down to this other, verse track that's distorted, and then we're coming back up to this other thing. It can seem really confusing, but basically what we wanted, the effect that we were going for, was to be able to have the intro of the chorus be really distorted, but to then kind of gradually and naturally fade back into a full frequency vocal that is a little cleaner. And it was really just experimentation with how we got there that is the reason this kind of looks the way it does. So you can see it's kind of going from I, which is all alone. There are no clean vocals, doubles or otherwise, that are happening on the I. And then could punch a hole through the wall has doubles on it, these guys. And then after wall, with all this pent-up aggression, that's where this clean lead vocal starts. And so it's kind of like things are trading off in interesting ways, or in what seems like chaotic ways, but actually kind of work for the song. And when you listen to it in the track, I don't get the sense that this is kind of like weird to listen to. Obviously, arrangement-wise, it's weird. With regards to the session and the organization of it, it's weird. But when you listen to it, like if we solo up these vocals, you won't get the sense that things are actually trading off as much as they are.
I can't resist. I swear that I could punch a hole through the wall with all this pent-up aggression. I embarrass myself.
As you can hear, we also get harmonies that come in there too. And those are just really hard right off the bat. And so if we're taking a listen to all that kind of stuff, we checked out the distorted vocal. The clean one that comes in up here sounds like this.
All this pent-up aggression, I embarrass myself till I need witness protection. You get me so damn high, I need an intervention. Yeah, you turn me on, but you give me depression.
Again, more, effects being added. We're adding a slap delay with Echo Boy Jr. And we've got these doubles, which are actually completely dry, funnily enough.
All this pent-up aggression, I embarrass myself till I need witness protection. You get me so damn high, I need an intervention. Yeah, you turn me on, but you give me depression.
So yeah, really just letting the lead vocal that's in the center there get all of those effects, allowing that one to be the wet one, so to speak. And so we get some harmonies down here too. Again, these are both dry, panned left, right.
Oh, with all this pent-up aggression, I embarrass myself till I need witness protection. You get me so damn high, I need an intervention. Yeah, you turn me on, but you give me depression.
Right, so a bit of a change in a part there too. Not really doing too much different with the harmony parts here, but just supporting it the way that it needs to be supported. Later on in the song, we start adding parts, adding harmony parts specifically. Moving forward from there, we get our second verse, which sounds like this.
Take me to heaven, put me through hell, all the way up, then all the way down. Give me attention, then throw a wrench in all of this tension. I don't know how.
So again, really kind of, subtle, not a ton of anything going on. effects wise. You know, there's a very small smidge of that reverb here, but a lot of this stuff is getting automated anyway. So, you know, it's not really a big player. Then as soon as we hit this pre-chorus, that's when we start getting this automation coming up.
You take control of my body, putting bad thoughts in my mind. Soon as I look in your eyes,
Right, so we go from kind of like having a, you know, like a really kind of dry clamped down V2. And then once we get to the second verse, when we get those synths coming in, we get those strummy guitars, we get our counterpoint guitar, you know, like a lot of these things are kind of opening up and getting spatial. Vocals should kind of do the same thing probably, right? So we get a lot of those delays happening. We get reverbs opening up. And then what happens? We clamp right back down for our chorus.
could punch a hole through the wall with.
So the fact that we've got, as soon as I look in your eyes, which is all a part of this, you know, kind of wet, dreamy vocal kind of thing. We don't need the I on the distorted vocal. We just need could punch a hole through the wall on our distorted one. And then we're kind of going back to the same sort of thing that we did before on this chorus. We're leaving out this first part of the clean vocal to have the distorted one. Our left and right doubles are there nice and dry on the left and right of the distorted vocal. And then the clean stuff takes over again. There are a couple of other harmonies, I believe, on You Take Control of My Body. Let's check those out. These are panned left and right, just 25%.
You take control of my body. Soon as I look in your eyes,
And I remember us working on those a little bit, you know, making sure to get the right notes on each ones. If we're listening to that with the lead, we get this.
You take control of my body, putting bad thoughts in my mind. Soon as I look in your eyes,
You know, just, again, trying to get them to support that lead vocal. And we get our second chorus, only now what we're doing is we're adding another harmony. You know, again, building up the vocal arrangement. So that sounds like this. Oh, and it's distorted. Right, so higher vocal, little bit of distortion to get it to cut. If we listen to all of that in the vocal bus, we've got this.
I could punch a hole through the wall with all this pent-up aggression. I embarrass myself till I need witness protection. You get me so damn high, I need an intervention. Yeah, you turn me on, but you give me depression.
Really straightforward kind of stuff, but clever use of inversions of chords and things like that, where you'll notice that on the second, on You Turn Me On, there's a shift that moves up in the harmonies as opposed to kind of everything staying where it was. We kind of move up in register a little bit to kind of make room for or accentuate the last line of that chorus. Then what do we get next? What are these? I don't even know what these are. Let's check them out. Okay, so these were those vocals that I was thinking were what I thought were vocals actually turned out to be guitars. These were the vocals of those. If we go back up here to our guitars, these guys over here, I had originally thought these were vocals when in actuality, these were the vocals that I was thinking about. So we've basically just got gangs, which I believe are, I'm guessing it's LØLØ, Mike and Jeff just kind of doing gang vox of that main melody. I would imagine that's what it would have to be, because these came, like, Bounce in Place is something I've never used, so it has to be coming from Mike. So yeah, we've got these, you know, kind of gangy vocals doing the gangy gang thing, and it looks like we have a vocal down here as well.
You turn me on, but you give me depression.
Right, just the kind of distorted callback on the hook. And yeah, okay, what else we got here? Okay, so bridge. Our bridge vocal sounds like this.
I might just be a masochist. I let you eat me alive. You call me up, I can't resist. I swear that I could punch a hole through the wall with all this pent-up aggression. I embarrass myself till I need witness protection. You get me so damn high, I need an intervention. Yeah,
Cool. Yeah. And it's an interesting thing, like singing that part down, you know, in terms of intensity, like that was obviously a conscious choice on our part. I'm pretty sure a lot of these vocals were recorded in Toronto at Loudmouse in the West End. I remember us really trying to get that ramp up into the second half of the last chorus on the So Damn High. You know, getting an intensity change there was going to be really important because like all of this stuff is super down. On the bridge coming into that first half of the chorus, like we get nothing in the guitars. We get our main guitar riff coming back. There's a couple of little like sprinkly things with the synths and stuff like that, but we're pretty wide open there in the arrangement. Like if we listen,
I might just be a masochist.
right, so she's like right up, you know, out in the open. And then once we get this guitar riff coming back in and we get this transition into the second half, we need that energy ramp up in the vocal to get us to that second half, or else it's going to sound weird, right? So we get this.
So I need witness protection. You get me so damn high. I need an intervention. Yeah.
And then we're back to cooking again, right? So we've looked at harmonies, we've looked at vocals. There's one other harmony down here, I think, that we missed, which is literally just Eat Me Alive, I think.
Let you eat me alive. You
Yeah, and those sound like this.
eat me alive.
You know, just really simple choice harmony. A big part of production, I think, is in a larger context, trying to read the room. You know, when you've got a part like this where it's like everything is really open and spacey and sparse, and you've got like different synth things happening and things are filtered down and things are very kind of low energy. Obviously, you don't want stacked 3-4 part harmony just raging with like doubles panned left and right going nuts, right? Like you want to read the room on it. So it's like, yeah, a single vocal with maybe a couple harmonies on either side. That's maybe all you need, right? I don't think there's anything else that we've touched on in the vocal that is new. In the post-chorus, you know, we get these gang vocal doubles of what the guitar part is doing up top. Those things come back. This is exactly the same as this. We just kind of repeat the same thing.
You turn me on, but you give me depression. Give me depression.
So yeah, nothing kind of new in the vocal arrangement there. The only other thing that comes in is this sort of lead effects bus. And these are all of the lead effects that came from Mike that were printed from his, you know, kind of original session. A lot of it here we're using very sparsely. You know, like there's really actually not a lot of it that we decided to keep because we were going to be recording new vocals, and of the vocals that we were recording, obviously these effects wouldn't really apply too much, but we did use them in some spots. We can just kind of take an overall look at them.
You turn me on, but you give me depression.
So yeah, like a lot of them are sort of lead effect, you know, pitched down versions of older vocals and things like that. We've got this kind of thing. All of those reversey kind of things like what we looked at when we were at the beginning. All of this up here is mute automation, so we're not hearing anything that's going on in here. You know, same sort of thing.
You turn me on, but you
Same thing here.
You turn me on, but you
Right, so that's kind of the entirety of the tracks in the song. The only thing we really have left to look at is any kind of bus processing, any send return effects, and anything that's on the master. So my music bus is, you know, pretty similar to what it's always been. It's a Pro Q3, a 33609, and a Pultec. You know, that's kind of what I've been rocking for the better part of like, I want to say 7 years now. It just works. I love it. It sounds great. And so let's maybe just loop a last chorus and we'll kind of see what's going on with those guys.
You turn me on, but you give me depression.
So here's without any of that.
You turn me on, but you give me depression.
So it's a little unkempt, I guess, is a good way to put it. So with the EQ, and we'll throw this Neve 33609 back in.
You turn me on, but you give me depression.
Yeah, it just feels like there's a nice kind of squash on everything. And then we throw the Pultec in and we'll get this.
You turn me on, but you give me depression.
Yeah, Pultec just opens everything up. The lows get lower, the highs get higher. You know, we just extension of this range. It's like the frequency range gets bigger. I know that's not actually happening, but it's kind of what it feels like to me. And that is only on our music bus. I've got a vocal bus, so all the music is going to all music. All the vocals are going to all vocals. I've got nothing on the vocal bus. And so we're only really compressing the music here. And then if we go to our main or our master track, here's where we're doing, you know, some kind of mastering stuff. Again, a similar kind of low cut with a bit of a boost in the low end. I think I pushed this up just because I was missing a little bit of low end. Pultec didn't quite get us there. And then I've got this BX Digital, this thing I picked up from Andrew Sheps. This stereo width knob is kind of a magic bullet for width. If you know, you know. Then we've got the Ampex. Can't argue with the Ampex. It's a great tape machine. It does the Ampex thing. And finally, Pro L. Can't really knock Pro L. It's an industry standard for a reason. Let's take some of that stuff off and have a listen. So here's our Pro Q3. Yeah. That low end move is really necessary. Actually, now that I'm hearing it gone and then come back, that was really necessary. We'll check out our BX Digital width knob move. So here's without. And here's with. Yeah, it just kind of moves stuff to the side even more. Like you get sort of what I was saying about the Pultec kind of like giving you the impression that like the range gets extended. This does the same thing, but for like the edges of the stereo field. Like I feel like the stereo field gets bigger. And again, I know that's not actually happening. We're just making more use of it with clever, you know, delays and phasing and things like that. And then this ATR 102, the Ampex, we'll check that out. Here's without. And here's with. Okay, it's interesting. There's a bit of a level drop there, and I think I did that just because I was maybe hitting the tape machine a little too hard. That being said, the harmonic qualities of what's going on there are important to listen for. Maybe we'll check that out again. So we've got without and with. Like it's really subtle, and I know it's hard to hear because there is a bit of a level drop, but I'm hearing actually a little bit more crispiness in the high end. I'm hearing a bit of a complementary shift in the low end too that isn't present when it's off. It's kind of interesting how like tape or tape emulation, it does a similar thing to compression, but it's not the same. It also does a similar thing as EQ, but also not the same. It kind of lives in this weird nether realm of like not really being one thing or the other. And then just Pro L, pushing up level. So here's without. And here's with. Okay, so yeah, just loud. Loud. we like it loud. And so if there's anything else to discuss, it would just be a lot of these send effects. But I mean, we kind of were looking at them as we went through. A lot of them are, you know, what you would find on, you know, most other stuff. We've got vintage verb, you know, nothing new there. We've got, this is kind of an interesting thing. It's an Echo Boy vintage verb combo. That's just kind of like, you know, a general, you know, kind of spacey schmutz bus. You know, if you want a bunch of stuff to happen and linger, you know, that's kind of your bus for that. This is one I don't really use very often and didn't actually really get used that much in the session. But yeah, I'm pretty sure a lot of these probably came from Mike because I don't remember making presets for LØLØ in Pro R. But the stuff that's mine will be stuff like Echo Boy Jr. and the slap stuff. Like that's me right up the middle usually. Valhalla Room is something I'll use, and then the Metaflanger and the Aphex, which I showed you guys earlier. So that is it, everybody. That is You Turn Me On But You Give Me Depression. This was such a fun song to work on. It was such a fun song to be a part of. I am ever grateful and thankful to the LØLØ team for having us on. It was an amazing process. It was an amazing privilege getting to work with a guy like Mike Robinson. Like a lot of other LØLØ songs, I think it's, you know, a testament to sort of what I had mentioned earlier about when you get a bunch of really talented people in the same room working on something, this is what you get, you know? Like, there's a reason that it has 33 million streams on Spotify. There's a reason why it's one of her top spitting songs. And I think that has everything to do with the fact that you have an expertly written melody, which is executed expertly by the vocalist singing that melody, and has an expert level production backing it up. And then that is delivered to an expert level mixer, Mr. Alex Ganea. And then that mix is delivered to a expert level mastering engineer, Mr. Randy Merrill. And so that kind of quality down the line, from the inception of a song to the delivery of a song to a DSP, and you have the best possible chances of it doing well. And thankfully, in LÖLÖ's case, it is doing well, and it has done well. So thank you for watching. Thank you for tuning in. If you enjoyed this video, please consider liking and subscribing. And also, please leave a comment if you would like to see further production deep dives on LÖLÖ songs, on any other songs that I've produced that you may enjoy. Please leave a comment, request them. If you would like to see further production recreations, I would be glad to do those as well. Please leave those in a comment. Also, consider hitting the notification bell so you can be notified when more videos like this come out. My name is Jordan. Thank you so much for sticking around. We'll see you soon.